Hello, Mrs. Brown here. So as you get ready to create your newspaper for Romeo and Juliet, you're going to be writing in a different style than the kinds of writing that we've done so far in class. So the purpose of this presentation is to give you a brief overview of what we mean by writing in a newspaper style. Now, news style is different from the other kinds of writing that we've done. We've looked at personal narratives, we've looked at literary analysis, we've looked at description. But when you're writing for the news, you're writing for a different kind of purpose. News writing has to communicate things very quickly. A newspaper is trying to sell their stories, and they want to have that information presented to their readers as quickly as possible. There's actually a style format for newspaper writing called the inverted pyramid, and this is where the most important ideas are right at the top, and then as you continue down with the story, your least ideas, your less important facts and details all go down to the bottom. So for example, if I were going to write a fiction story about a car crash, I might start with a description of the people in the car and what they were thinking about that day, and then sort of build up to the big event of the crash itself. But in a newspaper article, you're going to be doing that differently. You're going to start with your headline, which is going to have the big story, which might be something like car crash kills 2. And then you'll go on to explain where it happened, when it happened, and then maybe way down as you get down to the very bottom, you'll start talking about where the people were going or what kind of cars they were driving. So the news style is going to be very different from the kinds of writing that we've done so far, and you'll want to keep this in mind as you prepare to write your Verona Voice articles. So every newspaper article basically has to answer what we call the 5 W's, or sometimes 5 W's and 1 H. And this is the who, what, when, where, why, and the how of the story. So as you consider the events that happen in Romeo and Juliet and how you're going to translate those into a newspaper style, you're going to be thinking about who are the characters involved, what happened, when did this take place, the dates and the times, where was it occurring within the story, why, some of the motivations or background, and then how, basically, what it was that unfolded or occurred as part of the events. So think about each story that you write as your news story and make sure that it's got the 5 W's and the 1 H. Now, even within a newspaper, there are different styles of writing. There's what we call hard news and what sometimes referred to as soft news. The hard news are going to be things like the breaking news. These are the big events and stories, and we already talked about Act 1, things like the fight breaking out in the street. In a breaking news or hard news story, you stick to just the facts. You do not do any kind of opinions, you don't give any analysis or background, and you use quotes from other people to show their different points of view about what happened. So the newspaper reporter themselves does not say things that happen, but they go and they find the facts, they interview the people on the scene. And then we have things like soft news. So for Act 1, you're going to be writing some things like you may write editorials, and these would be opinions. What do people think about the Prince's Decree? You're going to be creating feature stories. These might be things like the story about the party and the big ball that happens. Now, a soft news can appeal more to emotions and might even use some personal examples, plus still the quotes from others to show the points of view. So as you create your newspaper, your others quotes are going to come from the characters in the story. So you're going to go back to the text to look for those examples and things to include in both your hard news and your soft news stories as you put your paper together. And finally, as you consider what to write about for each act, you may want to consider what we call in journalism the news determinants. These are the things that people use to decide what makes a good story, what's going to be the lead story on the news that night, or what's going to be the above-the-fold headline for the newspaper. And those include elements like location. Events that are happening close to the people and to the readers are going to get more prominence than events that are happening far away. So for example, in Romeo and Juliet, you're going to want to be reporting about the things that happen to the characters and within that town. You may mention something like, things that were happening in Mantua, but if they're not really important to the lead characters, they're not probably going to be given prominence in your newspaper. You also want to consider timeliness. Events that are happening right now are more important than events that are happening days away. Events that happen to notable people or places that everyone knows get more prominence in the news. So for example, if if the governor is caught spending money in a bad way, that's going to get prominence in the news story. But if your principal gets caught doing something, it might not be quite as important. And if your little brother gets caught doing something, that's probably not going to make the 5 o'clock news. So notable people and places are part of your news determinants. Another thing that's news determinants is conflict, things that cause people to have a clash with each other. If there's some sort of extraordinary element in it, the old saying in news is that if a dog bites a man, that's not really news. Dogs bite people. It's kind of what you expect dogs might do. But if a man bites a dog, now you've got something that's worthy of the news. And finally, you want to look at things that are going to arouse the emotions. These are what we call the human interest stories, things that just cause people to have some degree of empathy or to feel something, whether it's sadness or happiness, and just are things that might be of interest to the reader. So as you go to create your newspaper and you're looking at elements from all the different acts to put together, consider this news writing style and consider the news determinants to take the events and actions from the play and put them into your own version of the Verona Voice. And that's it for this presentation. See you in class tomorrow.